Hey there, Emma here, and in 2023 I hosted a painting challenge called Dogtober where we painted a different dog breed every day of the month. You may have seen some of the clips that I posted on Shorts at the time, just showing like a few little clips from each painting, but I've decided to go and pull out the real-time footage and share them this year so you can follow along if you'd like to. A couple of disclaimers/explainers. The point of the challenge for me was that I wanted to try and loosen up. I'm a realistic portrait artist, and so I gave myself a smaller size to work with as well as a time frame. I'm painting on roughly about A6 size paper, which is pretty small. In terms of measurements, that's like roughly 10.5 centimeters by 14.8 centimeters or 4.1 by 5.8 inches. And I also tried to set myself a time limit of about 15 minutes. I really wanted to challenge myself to loosen up, but you can approach this any way you like. Maybe you'll do it in a different medium or a certain color palette. The options are endless, totally up to you, but you're more than welcome to follow along, and these are kind of like mini tutorials. I do want to point out though that as this was unusual for me and a challenge to me, not all of them are that good. I really struggled in the beginning to start loosening up, and particularly struggled with the long-haired dogs. But you know, it's an adventure and you'll see me progress through the month and learn a lot. If you want to grab the outline sketches, I have put all 31 sketches into a document, a PDF that you can download from my website. I will link that in the description. You'll just need to pop your email address in, which will sign you up to my mailing list, but then you'll get the document with all 31 outline sketches, roughly about the same size that I'm painting. You're more than welcome to print them, trace them, size them up or down if you need to. I'll be working with my usual set of supplies and mixing colors as well, but I will talk you through the process as we go. Let's jump in. Welcome to day 18 of Dogtober. We're painting a golden retriever, and I know I've been saying that I've been wanting to avoid wet on wet technique for these kind of little mini portraits, but I think I did this one in a way that works. So I'm getting started with a light brown color. So basically what I had on my palette already was some dried brown, which I make by mixing up an orange and then adding a little bit of blue to it. So I basically reactivated that, added a bunch of yellow, didn't like the way that color looked, so added more red as well, and now I'm trying again. So I'm adding a little bit more yellow, a little bit more red, making sure if anything has a green undertone, I'm cancelling it out. Oftentimes you do end up mixing quite a good color, you just need to simply water it down. And something that has like a really golden, like a light golden fur color just needs to be watered down rather than, you know, it being a problem with your mixing. It's just you probably just need to see it diluted instead of rich on the palette. So see how punchy that color is there? Like that's going to be our golden color, perfectly fine. We just need enough water. So that is why I opted to go with a wet on wet. So I'm going to put water across the whole body. Let's exclude the eyes and the nose and the mouth. And that's just going to give us a base to put this color on and build it up slowly. I actually think I could have made this a bit more punchy. We'll see later on in the piece, but there's a few little details I do on the face, which I think age the dog and make it look more like a senior dog. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think had the color on the face just been a little bit more punchier and the contrast between some of that detail and the fur a little less, it might have had a more youthful appearance. So I'm taking a very, very light version of this warm brown color, and I'm just washing it over the whole dog now that that's all wet. And that water is really helping us dilute this color. And I'm going to start to build it up in a few areas that I want to. One of them being the back of the dog, like on the back of the neck and the back of the dog that we can see. Also the ear, the floppy ear that is on the side that's facing us. I'm going to make that quite dark. I'm also going to cut that in on a dry layer as well to have it stand out a little bit more. While I'm in the area, I'm just going to flick some of the strokes of fur out to the side there, because Goldens are long-haired dogs, but I don't want to paint every stroke of fur. So I'm going to do little things that insinuate that there's a lot of beautiful long fur there. I do want to put a little bit of detail, like heavy color, around some areas on the face, but when you work wet on wet and we're working with such tiny features, you have to be quite careful here. So you might have to lift up a lot of the water to kind of dry that area off a tad before you can do this. So I've got very little moisture on my brush, but I've just been trying to build some of those areas. Just lift it off between the ear and the back so that they're going to stand out more. And, you know, I want a little bit of color to go on this chin here, and under it, I want there to be some color around the eye. So the way that you can kind of control the flow in a wet on wet situation is, first of all, reduce the amount of water that's on the page so you can soak it up with your brush before you add any colour. But then it's when you dip into colour, dab your brush off on paper towel first before you go and put it on the page. It's just going to reduce the amount of spreading of that colour that happens. It becomes more of an even exchange. Your brush almost soaks up some of the water on the page while distributing some colour back down. So I'm putting little bits of colour. I've got like a little smile line around the back of the mouth and a little divot between like the eye, the nose and the mouth. There's just a little crease that I've put in there. I've put a little bit of chunky fur down the bottom, a shadow in the fur down the bottom, a little triangle. Got a little triangle under the chin that's casting a shadow onto the chest. I'm continually lifting colour under the ear so that it stands out against the back. We've got some pale colour around the eye and also the eye on the far side, but we can't really see that. As in, we can't really see that eye. And then when I'm happy with that placement, I'm going to dry it off. So we can see it turned out to be quite a pale colour. So that's why I think you could go a little bit more dramatic with the colour that you use. You got to remember with wet on wet, it's going to, dilute that colour, but then you have a colour shift when you dry something off anyway, and it just disappears a little bit. So on a dry layer now, I'm going to basically cut this ear out and make it stand out a little bit more. So I've popped some colour in there, probably a little bit too intensely. So I'm just kind of figuring out how I want to do this. I'm lifting a bit of colour off the top, placing some more down the bottom and a little bit at the top where it's connecting to the head as well. And then I want to make a more dramatic shadow on the chin, or like under the chin, I should say, on the neck of the dog. So I've tucked some colour in there and I'm just kind of adding water underneath it to invite it down. This is where I do some of these crispy details that end up aging the dog, I think. So I've gone around that smile line, I've gone around that little divot on the side of the muzzle. I'm doing a little shadow around the eye and the eyebrow. A little bit of a shadow on the top of the head where the ear is to kind of melt it in a little bit more there. A little bit of shadow on the back. Now, some of these I don't mind. I think it's specifically around the mouth that it aged the dog. So had I just done another wash of colour over this whole dog, it might not have looked so intense. Or had I just used a lighter colour on what I'm working on now, this dry layer, and also the contrast would have been a little bit less. So I'm just continuing to carve out a few things here, going around the eye to make that more dramatic. Dabbing off excess and putting a little eyebrow. Same on the other side, but we really don't see much. A little bit on the top of the snoot and under the snoot. Trying to just maybe blend out what I did on the side of the face now to take away that effect. But I think it really could have just been helped with a wash of colour, even if just it was over the top of the head. Not the ear, I think that's dark enough. But had I just put a little bit more punchy colour on the face, I think it would have looked a little bit better. So bear that in mind. I'm going to pop the tongue in now. So I've just grabbed a little bit of primary red from my pan directly and popped it on the palette and really watered that down. I'm just going to very gently pop that little tongue in now because there shouldn't be anything really damp touching that. So it should be free to just sit there for a while we do some other things. I'm going to dry it off and I've just mixed some purple in with some of the brown colour just to give us more of a dark browny black colour. Now that purple colour I've been using a lot throughout these tutorials and I mix that through naturally red and blue and then adding a little bit of yellow to neutralise that, and it just turns it into more of a muddier, deeper purple, which I've been using as a black. And so I've mixed that in with some of the brown that we used for the fur and I've gone in and put this in the dog's mouth. So that's the shadow in the mouth. I'm also just inviting some of that colour down with water to be more of like the gum line. You can see that I've negatively painted around a tooth. And now I'm going to pop some nostrils in. And what I just did between that was I popped a little shadow on the inside of the mouth on the far side of the tongue as well. So using pre-made black to do the nostrils, little comma shapes, we see more of the one facing us than the one on the right side of the dog. Little line that splits between them. Mixing all the beautiful colours on my palette to create a dark brown, just a different brown than we've been using. And I pop the eyes in, so we can't really see the one on the far side. I've just put like the teeniest little dot, but we can see more of the one facing us. I think also making the eye a bit bigger could have helped with the youthful appearance a little bit more, but that's okay. I've added more colour to the inside of the mouth. I've gone around that gum line now to make that stand out as well. I'm going to fade that in with water a little bit and dry it off. I know this one's moving very quickly. I'm struggling to keep up with the narration, but that's all good. I've dried that all off, and now I'm going in on the snoot, and I've put some colour on the bottom of the snout, the bottom of the nose. Oh my God, I've distracted myself now. And I've invited it up with water, so I'm trying to shade the bottom half of the nose. We just did that with a purpley brown colour. Going over the mouth details as well. Something that I just thought was really important in these mini portraits was just bringing more attention to the facial details. So I wanted them to be crisper, darker, higher in contrast. So deepening the mouth shadow, I'm also popping a little shadow on top of the tongue, just with some pale purpley colour, adding more colour to the bottom of the nose to deepen that while keeping it highlighted at the top, so a little lift. And then we can dry it off. And we are nearly there. So I'm dipping into some white now. Very tiny eyes, very hard to highlight, but we'll give it a crack anyway. So dipping into some white. And we want that nice and concentrated. Going to pop a little dot on the eye, on the kind of top right-ish, because we still want it to look like it's looking in the forward-facing direction to the right. I don't know why I'm persisting with putting this little crescent shape at the bottom, but if you can fit it, try. I did a little highlight on the far eye, but you can barely see it. Highlighting under the nostrils and a tiny little touch on top of the nose as well. I think I probably could have made the tongue a bit of a punchier colour. That might have been cool as well. Make it a little bit more pinky red. Going in with our purpley black colour and just crisping up the mouth details again. So painting the inner mouth on either side of the tongue. Popping another shadow on the nose and being really careful though, because I just put white here. So I'm not trying to cover that up. I'm just trying to paint around it. Dry that off. Dipping into some black now with the same small 3/0. And I'm just going to go back over that nostril to make it really crisp. Going to make that eye a smidge bigger and just kind of cut back some of the highlight. White is generally pretty forgiving, so it will let you do that. But that is our golden retriever. I hope you like this one, and I will catch you in the next one.